The sun dipped low over the golden plains of the African savannah, casting long shadows across the swaying grass. Daniel Wells stood at the edge of his modest camp, notebook in hand, the faint hum of insects and distant bird calls filling the air. A seasoned wildlife researcher with a quiet passion for big cats, he had come alone, drawn by a lifelong curiosity and the promise of studying lions in their natural habitat. His camp was simple: a canvas tent, a few solar-powered tools, and a battered Jeep parked nearby. It was remote, hours from the nearest village, just the way Daniel preferred it. Here, the distractions of the world melted away, replaced by the rhythms of nature, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant roar of elephants, and the chirp of nocturnal creatures waking with the dusk. Days slipped into nights as Daniel cataloged animal tracks, observed herds from afar, and listened to the landscape's stories. Each sunrise brought new wonders. But it was the lions he longed to find, the kings of the savannah. Then one evening, as the horizon blazed with orange fire, Daniel spotted a silhouette on a distant ridge. It moved with regal grace, mane rippling in the breeze, pausing to survey its kingdom. Through his binoculars, Daniel's breath caught. This lion was unlike any he'd seen, powerful, calm, commanding. He whispered aloud, as if naming something gave it meaning. Baron. The name felt right. From that moment, Baron was no longer just a subject of study. He was a symbol, a mystery that called Daniel deeper into the heart of the wild. Something had begun, not just a research expedition, but a journey of connection between a man and the untamed world. Days turned into weeks on the savannah, and the rhythm of life settled around Daniel like a second skin. Each morning, he rose with the sun, jotting notes and tracking movement through the vast golden plains. And always, at some point during the day, he would feel it, that watchful presence. Baron. The great lion never approached directly, but he was there. Sometimes perched on a distant rock, other times nestled in the tall grass, his amber eyes fixed on Daniel with a calm intensity. There was no aggression in his gaze, only curiosity, and something Daniel couldn't quite name. Respect, perhaps. First, Daniel was cautious, never turning his back when he sensed the lion near. But over time, their encounters became a quiet constant. He would go about his work, collecting data and recording observations, all the while aware of Baron's silent watch. The lion never growled, never prowled closer than necessary. He simply observed. In turn, Daniel began to speak aloud during his routines, not out of fear, but with a strange sense of companionship. He would describe his findings, the weather, even the taste of his morning coffee, knowing full well the lion didn't understand the words, but perhaps understood the tone. A rhythm emerged. At dusk, Daniel would sit near his campfire, and Baron would appear on the ridge, a dark silhouette against the glowing sky. Two creatures wildly different, yet bound by something deeper than instinct. They shared no touch, no sound, only space and time. In the hush of the savannah, a bond was growing, not of dominance or domestication, but of mutual respect, a silent trust that needed no words. In each other's presence, both man and beast found something rare: peace. One crisp morning, as the sun painted the savannah in soft gold, Daniel noticed something odd. A herd of gazelles, usually calm in the distance, bolted across the plain with startled urgency. Overhead, flocks of birds scattered noisily from the trees, their flight erratic and panicked. Puzzled, Daniel scanned the area, spotting faint winding trails etched into the dust, broad, sinuous lines that disappeared into the underbrush. He knelt to examine one, tracing it with his fingers. Snake, he muttered to himself, standing with a shrug. Probably just a python moving through. He noted it in his journal but didn't think much of it. The savannah was full of life. After all, some of it hidden, most of it harmless if left alone. That night the air felt heavier, the silence deeper. Daniel sat by his fire, half listening to the crackle of flames when he heard soft but urgent footfalls outside the circle of light. Baron. The lion's silhouette loomed at the edge of the camp, not still and statuesque as usual, but moving, pacing. His head was low, his tail flicking with agitation. He circled once, twice, then stopped near Daniel's tent, rumbling a deep, uneasy growl into the darkness. Daniel watched him carefully, concern furrowing his brow. Something was off, but fatigue pulled at him, and logic won out. Maybe Baron had sensed another predator nearby. Nothing unusual in the wild. Still, as Daniel zipped his tent closed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the savannah was trying to speak. Driven by a fresh trail of lion prints and the excitement of a new discovery, Daniel ventured deeper into the bushland than he ever had before. The grass grew taller here, tangled and thick, obscuring the ground beneath his boots. The sun beat down, but the air was cooler in the shadows of twisted acacia trees. He walked slowly, marking the tracks in his notebook, unaware that each step carried him further from the open plains, and from safety. He paused in a narrow clearing, bending to examine a paw print embedded in the soft earth. It was fresh. Maybe Baron had passed through only minutes earlier. Daniel smiled to himself, heart racing. Then in an instant the underbrush exploded. A weight-like stone slammed against his legs, and before he could react, coils thick as tree limbs wrapped around him. He cried out, struggling, as the giant African rock python dragged him to the ground. Its muscular body tightened, crushing his limbs with terrifying strength. Daniel clawed at the dirt, gasping, trying to reach for his knife, but the pressure was suffocating. The world spun as he was pulled deeper into the brush, eyes wide with panic. This wasn't a mere snake. It was a predator, silent and patient, and he had walked straight into its lair. As the light dimmed and the breath left his lungs, Daniel realized too late. He had ignored the warning. The coils tightened around Daniel's chest like an iron vise, squeezing the air from his lungs. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he thrashed wildly, clawing at the dirt, at the crushing body that held him. Dust filled his mouth. The python's scales were like rough leather, unyielding and cold. He gasped, but no breath came, only a weak wheeze as his ribs compressed under the immense pressure. His vision dimmed. The world narrowed to the suffocating grip and the throb of his slowing heartbeat. He reached for his belt, fingers brushing the handle of his knife, but the snake shifted, coiling higher, pinning his arms to his sides. Silence fell. No birds, no wind, just the faint rattle of leaves and the sound of his own weakening pulse. This was it. Daniel's eyes fluttered shut, darkness creeping in at the edges. He thought of the camp, of his notes, of Baron watching silently from the ridgeline. Regret filled his chest where air should have been. Then, a roar. It tore through the jungle like a shockwave. Deep, thunderous, furious, Baron. In a blur of movement, branches snapped and leaves exploded into the air. The python shifted, coils loosening in confusion. Another roar, closer this time, filled with primal rage. The snake hesitated. Then a massive shape crashed through the brush. Baron's golden mane blazed in the sunlight, his eyes locked on the serpent. With a snarl, he lunged. Fangs and claws tore into scales as the lion attacked with unmatched ferocity. The snake released its grip, thrashing, retreating. But Baron pressed on, driving it back, roaring again and again. Daniel collapsed, gasping, eyes wide as life surged back into his lungs. Through tears and dust, he watched the lion stand between him and the serpent's retreating form. Protector, guardian, savior. The silence returned, but it no longer felt empty. Baron exploded from the brush like a storm unleashed, his powerful frame a blur of muscle and fury. With a thunderous roar that echoed through the trees, he launched himself at the massive python, his jaws wide and eyes burning with primal rage. The serpent hissed, coiling tighter around Daniel's limp body, in a final, desperate attempt to finish the kill. But Baron was already there, slamming into the snake's midsection with the force of a battering ram. His claws tore through the scales, raking deep wounds into the python's flesh. The great snake retaliated, its body writhing and snapping around, striking with blunt, heavy blows. Its thick tail lashed out, catching Baron across the shoulder. The lion staggered but held his ground, teeth sinking into the serpent's flesh. Blood, warm, dark, and thick, splattered across the leaves as the two titans clashed in a storm of snarls and hisses. Baron fought like a creature possessed, his growls echoing through the canopy. Again and again he pounced, biting, clawing, battering the snake back inch by inch. The python, massive and muscular, tried to coil around him. But the lion's movements were relentless, driven not by instinct alone, but by something more. Purpose. At last, Baron struck true. With one final lunge, he sank his teeth into the base of the snake's skull, driving his claws into the soft underbelly. The python writhed violently, then fell still. Slowly, its coils loosened, sliding away from Daniel's body. The savannah fell quiet, save for the ragged breathing of both man and beast. Baron stood over the fallen serpent, chest heaving, his side marked by deep crimson gashes. Blood matted his mane and one foreleg trembled beneath his weight, but he did not retreat. Instead, he turned toward Daniel, who lay gasping and wide-eyed on the forest floor. Their eyes met, man and lion, both broken, both alive. Baron gave a low, weary grunt and limped to the side, collapsing beneath a tree. The battle was over. The savannah had witnessed something rare, a lion's heart not only as a hunter, but as a protector. Pain coursed through Daniel's body as he dragged himself across the blood-soaked ground, gasping for air and cradling bruised ribs. His limbs trembled with exhaustion, but he kept his eyes fixed on the lion. Baron stood for a moment, just a moment, his mane tangled with blood, his frame unsteady. Then he staggered forward and collapsed beside Daniel with a heavy sigh. Their bodies lay inches apart, man and beast, both broken and battered by the fight for life. Daniel reached out a trembling hand, resting it near the lion's paw, not quite touching. No words passed between them. None were needed. Hours slipped by. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the clearing. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness, and each time he opened his eyes, Baron was there, silent, breathing, watching. As darkness fell, the lion slowly rose, gave one last look at the man he had saved, and turned away. Without a sound, Baron disappeared into the tall grass, fading like a ghost into the savannah. Days passed in a haze. Daniel was barely conscious when the rescue team arrived, alerted by a missed check-in and worried colleagues. They found him curled in the dirt, dehydrated, bruised, but alive. Beside him lay the dried, blood-stained earth. Claw marks scarred the ground. And there, in the dust, were faint impressions, a lion's paw prints trailing off into the wilderness. When Daniel finally woke in a hospital bed days later, tears slid silently down his face, not from pain, but from loss. The savannah had given him a protector, and then, as all wild things must, it had taken him back. Months later, scarred but healing, Daniel returned to the savannah. The land welcomed him with its familiar warmth and whispering winds, but something vital was missing. Baron. He pitched his tent near the same ridge, close to the place where their bond had been forged in blood and silence. Each morning, he rose with the sun and scanned the horizon. Each night he sat by the fire, calling softly into the dusk, voice hopeful yet uncertain. Baron, he'd say. Just the name, a prayer. He left food at the edge of the clearing, fresh meat, placed carefully on a flat stone, always untouched. The vultures came, the jackals sniffed, but Baron never appeared. Daniel waited. Days stretched into weeks, and the golden plains remained quiet. He wandered the old paths they had once shared, stood beneath the tree where Baron had collapsed, watched the ridgeline where the lion used to sit like a silent guardian. But there was only wind now. Despite the emptiness, Daniel remained. Not because he expected a miracle, but because the bond they had shared deserved that much. A lion had saved his life, not out of instinct, but something deeper, something rare. And so, he waited. Not as a researcher, not even as a man hoping for closure, but as a friend hoping against hope. that somewhere in the endless grass, Baron was still watching. Twilight draped the savannah in soft purples and golds, and Daniel sat as he always did, quietly, by the fire, staring into the horizon. The air was still, the sky painted with the last light of day. He had begun to accept that Baron might never return. Then, like a ghost from memory, a silhouette appeared on the distant ridge. Daniel froze. His heart pounded as he stood, hardly daring to believe his eyes. The figure moved with slow, deliberate grace, the setting sun casting a halo around his battered frame. Baron. Even from a distance, Daniel saw the scars, fresh ones across his shoulder, a slight limp in his step. But his eyes were the same, calm, powerful, full of a quiet knowing. The lion descended the ridge slowly, never breaking gaze. Daniel stepped forward, breath caught in his throat. They met in the middle of the clearing, where blood had once soaked the earth. Baron stopped inches away, towering yet gentle. He lowered his great head, and Daniel did the same. Forehead touched forehead, man and lion, bound not by words but by something unbreakable. For a long moment they remained like that. Then, without a sound, Baron stepped back. He turned toward the plains, his golden mane catching the last rays of light. Daniel watched, tears welling in his eyes. He knew. This was not a return. It was a farewell. As the lion faded into the tall grass, Daniel fell to his knees, the sobs silent but deep. Baron was gone, but his spirit, his loyalty, his courage, those would never leave. Years passed, but the memory of Baron never faded. The bond forged between man and lion became the foundation for something greater. Daniel, now fully recovered and forever changed, founded Baron's Bond, a wildlife conservation initiative dedicated to protecting both lions and the misunderstood predators like the African rock python. His mission was simple: to preserve the delicate balance of the wild and to honor the silent connection that had once saved his life. Through documentaries, public talks, and educational programs, Daniel shared the story with the world, not just of the attack, but of the lion who defended him. The story of Baron struck a chord across continents. It wasn't just about survival. It was about trust, respect, and the rare moments when nature extends something extraordinary. Footage from his early days on the savannah played at schools, wildlife conferences, and online platforms. Images of Baron on the ridge, the scarred earth where the battle took place. Daniel's whispered calls into the twilight, and at the heart of it all, the unforgettable moment when man and lion touched foreheads under a fading sun. The final scene of the video fades in slowly. Daniel, older now, standing on that same ridge at dusk, watching the tall grass sway in the wind. Then the screen fades to black, and white letters appear. Sometimes the wild doesn't just take, it gives something unforgettable in return. Baron's bond lives on. And so does the lion who once chose not to kill, but to save. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear scars and walk into the wild, never to return. But their legacy roars forever. Thank you for watching this incredible, true story. If it touched your heart, please leave a like, share it with someone who loves animals, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the wild teaches us what humanity truly means.